We have to understand that since the 1960s, the sexual revolution has wrecked all of that for a lot of people. So let's go to what happened in the early 1960s. The promise was that the sexual revolution would liberate men and women, right? And especially women. The promise was that uh, artificial contraception adopted en masse would strengthen marriages by giving people control over their fertility. All of this probably seemed like common sense at the time. A lot of people believed in it. And yet, over the decades, we saw quite the opposite happen. Instead of strengthening marriage, the post-revolutionary world saw marital breakup on a scale never before witnessed. It saw cohabitation soar on a scale never seen before. Why does cohabitation matter? Because homes in which people are not married are even more likely to split up than homes in which people are married. Abortion became ubiquitous, and fatherless homes, as we know, are now the norm in many parts of the West. My point in this litany is that these trends are known to everyone, but what we really aren't looking at is that the children of these homes, the adolescents of these homes, the young adults who then grow up without a model for how to create this institution called the family themselves. And I believe that a lot of our most pressing social problems are coming from the fact that the sexual revolution has been embraced uncritically across most of the West, certainly in all of its elite precincts.
So I've been having a bit of a think about this topic for a few days now, and I don't think I've quite worked it all out, but this is where I'm up to at the moment. So you've got power and the sexual revolution. Okay. So let's start with a look at the history, just a helicopter view of it. So the most powerful institutions on earth for the vast amount of human history have always sought to control human reproduction. And they of course are the churches and the kings and queens and the rulers of countries. So just take, for example, the Catholic Church there. They controlled reproduction by you could only get married in the church, and any child born out of wedlock was illegitimate and therefore couldn't inherit any sort of assets as the parents died. Legitimate children could, and of course any child that is born into the church or into the congregation, so to speak, is now going to be giving money to the church. And when you had the Reformation and the advent of Henry VIII, King Henry VIII there, he created the Anglican Church. The Protestants, the king became the head of the church, and so all the rules around reproduction, he now was the head honcho in charge, and this carried on in all religions. All religions seek to control human reproduction, and I think it was in 1959 they invented the contraceptive pill, and then you had the sexual revolution that came in the early 60s, and Summer of Love, I think, was 1965. I might be wrong there. Woodstock and all that. And by the 1970s, women were realising that although they could control their reproduction, giving it away for free was not the best policy. So things started to change a bit. Now, the sexual revolution came about by allowing women to take control of their reproduction. So they took it out of the hands of the authorities and into the hands of individual women. Men had no say in that. The technology came along, the women used it to their benefit, and men didn't get a sexual revolution in that regard, because the responsibility the thing is, women could now have sex without the consequences or the responsibility for the consequences of sexual intercourse. In other words, babies. Whereas men, what happened was the authorities stepped in, so the governments, the society, if you like, decided that men were to be held responsible for the children in wedlock or out with, or illegitimate, legitimate, whatever. Like, if the child, in some cases, the child isn't even the man's, you're still paying child support, and you don't have to be married. The woman just has to put your name on the birth certificate, and you're now paying child support, and that is enforced by the state. So men have not had a sexual revolution. They've never been freed of responsibility for the consequences of sexual intercourse. So the argument that society is where it is today due to the march of progress, or the feminist agenda and the sexual revolution, is not on men. Men haven't had the sexual revolution. As far as I'm aware, there's only 3 forms of contraception for a man. That's non-surgical, of course. Of course, you can have a vasectomy. Women can have their tubes tied, so that's the same. That's the same thing. But as far as contraception goes, men have got condoms, abstinence, or the withdrawal method. And abstinence is really the only 100% foolproof method there, whereas women have 41 different choices when it comes to birth control. So my understanding around that is that it's actually easier to produce a contraceptive for men that reduces the ability for sperm to swim, and with fewer side effects than it is to produce these estrogen-based contraceptives for women, which fool the body into believing it's already pregnant, changing their moods and what have you with all that. But of course, the argument has always been, who would trust a man to take a pill every day? Because men aren't trustworthy, obviously. Not taking into account that if men could actually control their reproduction that easily, of course they would. And, given the financial consequences if they didn't. Of course, what it's really about is about power. It's the power dynamic. The women have understood that they now have the power of reproduction that once was only belonged to the churches and the state. And men, of course, although we're told that we're all powerful and with the patriarchy and all that, It's of course an illusion. Men have never been able to control their reproduction and still have sexual intercourse, and they've never been freed from the responsibility at all. In fact, the responsibility has only increased as the women have realised their freedom from that responsibility. It's now all on the men. So when people come out and say what's happening with society today is due to the sexual revolution and where that's led, understand that it's women who've had that sexual revolution, not men.